In the second chapter of Genesis, we have a wrong translation that has done much toward our erroneous ideal of sin and the matter of inheritance. It does not mean that man sinned and thereby became mortal, and this mortality was handed on down to the rest of us. It did not intend to convey that the sin reversed man's nature, but that the sin itself could have been reversed, and that it could have been corrected. At that time it merely meant an error could be corrected. Jesus taught the remission of sin rather than its perpetuation with consequent results. Mistakes can be reversed is the teaching. All the so-called human laws or mental laws belong in this category. They are all mistakes in that they do not define the true governing law of the universe and all things therein. But they can be set aside at any time. They are denied by merely rejecting them in favor of the true law. Bose has proved that conclusively. He states that all so-called laws of heredity are only manifestations brought about by the thoughts of men and can be set completely aside at any time. First, however, we must become one with the Christ self. It takes a Christ consciousness to set these laws aside, just as it takes true knowledge to set aside false beliefs. This Christ state must first be attained or unfolded, and once in this state, there is, of course, nothing else. Hypnosis may spring from two conditions: a partial state of consciousness or a false state of consciousness. A partial state of consciousness admits of certain capabilities, and one feels limited or unable to go beyond that which his consciousness indicates. All restraint, or the sense of inability to accomplish, is only a state of partial hypnosis. The false state of consciousness is the notion that certain things are true which are not true at all. This is a state of complete ignorance of reality. It is a mental state built up of impressions that are entirely false, states of consciousness built up regarding something, if it can be so stated, that does not exist at all, or, on the other hand, a set of impressions that are entirely false regarding a thing that in itself is entirely true. This might be illustrated with the notion once held by man that the earth is flat. The hypnotic result was that men were held with certain restricted zones of activity, fearing to go beyond these restricted areas lest they should fall off the edges of the earth. That idea seemed completely silly now that we know the earth is round. It was round all the time, but the people were as limited in their activity as if the earth itself had actually been flat, with a great chasm spreading beyond these edges. Adventurers who had another notion about the earth dared to venture beyond the limitations in which others lived, and they sailed out across the chasm without any difficulty so far as they were concerned. To them, the chasm did not exist, nor did it exist in fact. However, the others knew they would fall into it. The manner in which the condition was met was not in overcoming the chasm, for there was no such thing. It was simply a matter of sailing out beyond the limitations of opinions, and it was found that no actual limitation existed at all. This is exactly the manner in which the masters meet every situation. What appears exists not at all, they say. They are not hypnotized by the opinions held by the race, nor conditions as they appear to the race, for they know reality. Their determination is in the realm of facts, and they traverse time and space just as Columbus sailed across the edges of the earth. There was no edges to the earth, and there is no time or space to the master. They are all illusions, just as the flat earth with its edges was an illusion. This is what Jesus meant when he said, "Get thee behind me, Satan," as it is translated. In reality, he said, "Get thee behind me, limitation, for there is no such thing." He put it out of the range of his consideration and conduct, for in his illumined state there were no such things. He saw through the hypnotic spell, the veil in the temple, and lived wholly in reality. In sleep, the consciousness becomes completely universal. It becomes knowing with all attributes alert. That is why we can often do in our sleep what we cannot do when awake. We submerge it because of our outer activities during the day. We go on in a great hurry during the day so that we become completely exhausted when night comes, and our consciousness immediately floods back to the all-knowing condition, though we do not know it. We are not conscious of what is taking place. We should be just as conscious as in our so-called waking condition. Sleep allows that complete consciousness to come into function. That is why psychoanalysis lays such stress on the dream state as being superior to the waking state when used rationally and in its right order. But the two, the sleeping and waking state, should be exactly the same. If we would turn our thoughts to this higher consciousness, we would be in that realm always. We would know. The dream is more of a clairvoyant state of a very low order, unless we do turn our minds to a higher condition or knowing state. If we do this, our dreams are true always and are not something that has not actually happened to us at all. Dreams ordinarily are a mixture of the earthly and the higher experience. If our thoughts were always of that higher condition, our dreams would correspond. Our days would be concluded the moment we went to sleep. Sometimes, when a man is up against a stone wall, so to speak, due to serious problems which he cannot seem to solve, his state of exhaustion appears to quiet the outer, and very often the solution comes through. He has merely carried on the false practices of living until he has contracted his being as far as he can. It is just the same as if he had gone to sleep. The cessation of activity through exhaustion caused his mind to let go of the conditions, and then the solution came through. The method of relaxation, which the masters use, is to let go completely of any outer condition and always project their thoughts to a perfect activity. The physical, emotional, and mental must be stilled by directing the attention higher. The difference between the ordinary dream and a nightmare is that in the nightmare you have the psychic phenomena in evidence becoming connected with an outer activity and always thus permitting anything to come in, the same as in psychism or mesmeric influence. Can't say that word. I have seen people hypnotized, and they were not themselves at all. They would act like monkeys or go about barking like dogs. This is quite similar to the nightmare. When you are in the nightmare, it is possible to come out of it if you will think of what you would think if you were in the waking state. A patient has been known to cure himself entirely of extreme cases of nightmare by thinking while experiencing the nightmare. Just what would I do if I were in the waking state? He would have accomplished the same result more quickly had he thought what he would do were he in a perfect state of spiritual consciousness, and would have raised himself nearer to that state. If he would ask himself what he would accomplish if he could see directly through to the spiritual, it would become much simpler and more beneficial because it would be permanent. The breaking up of a nightmare becomes automatic if just before you go to sleep you declare that you